Hello, welcome to March. This week's episode of Star Trek Next Generation that I've tried to find some very good facts for. It's Justice, which the audience seems to be split on this episode, whether or not it's a rubbish episode or a good episode. Personally, I like it a lot. It's quite a memorable episode. Some of the costumes in it were a bit rubbish, but other than that, it's a good episode. The main story is that the Enterprise is delivering colonists to the Stranad system, and they stop over for shore leave on a very pleasant planet that they find called Rubicon 3. And once there, of course, silly old Wesley Crusher stumbles into trouble, and he's the centre of attention like usual. Okay, so the first fact that I've dug up. Now, loads of episodes in Star Trek throughout the years, from the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, episodes include time travel. Okay, it's not just the one episode. There's quite a few. There's Time's Orphan, Trials and Tribulations, Time's Arrow, Past Tense, and that's just a small handful. Future's End, loads are coming to my mind. There's loads of time travel episodes. But the point is, this episode in Star Trek Next Generation Series 1 doesn't include any time travel. And the next fact, there's actually 0 scenes in this episode that are on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. This is the only episode in the whole history of Star Trek Next Generation that has no bridge scenes. So that's fairly interesting. Okay, now the next fact. When they beam down, when initially Riker and co beam down to the planet Rubicon 3, if you have a look carefully, very carefully, have a look out the corner of your eye, you'll notice that it curiously looks exactly the same as Starfleet Academy. Therefore, I can only assume that it must have inspired the look of the Academy. Maybe one or two of the architects that were at the time designing Starfleet Academy must have been on the Enterprise and beamed down to the Rubicon 3 and liked what they saw, and then when they went back to the Enterprise they started drawing up the look for Starfleet Academy, went back to Earth, and that's what they built. So Starfleet Academy is actually just a kind of copy of Rubicon 3. Now, also on Rubicon 3, everybody on the planet seems to run around instead of walking. I'm assuming so because I'm assuming that the reason is because running is more fun than walking, because they all look like they're having a lot of fun. Now, the actual act of running is inspired by the exercise known as running, but a lot of people do to keep fit. They get up in the morning, they go for a run, they take part in marathons, they run from here to there, they put on their sweatpants, they have whole outfits for running, and they just get very fit. So yeah, the running in this episode is inspired by running that people do. Everybody on Rubicon 3 seems intent on a lifestyle of happiness. They all have a smile on their face, they sit around all day running, they play with balls, they throw things, they play music, they're dancing. Everybody just seems to have fun all day, like a kind of proto-riser, I guess. But on closer inspection, are they having fun, or are they just completely weird? I go with the latter. I think the people on Rubicon 3 are just completely weird. During this episode, Justice, we can see that Star Trek Voyager's Lieutenant Carey makes his Star Trek episode debut. Now, I wonder if he wishes he'd actually stayed on the Enterprise in the long term instead of going on board the stupid Voyager and getting stuck so far away and going through so much trouble. Yeah, that's Lieutenant Carey. It's good to see him, good to see his curly hair, but I feel a bit sad for him because of his destiny. The corporation McDonald's. Love it or hate it, McDonald's offered Paramount $100 per episode to have a McDonald's on board the Starship Enterprise. Now, their aim was for whenever you'd see people walking down a corridor, for example, okay, I'm just throwing this out there, you might see Dr. Crusher and Will Wheaton walking down the corridor, and there'd be a sign on the wall pointing to the McDonald's, which would be perhaps next to 10 forward, or maybe even occupying a corner of 10 forward. But Paramount turned them down, insisting that in the future it's quite likely that maybe in 300-400 years there probably wouldn't be a McDonald's still functional. If there was this guarantee, then they would have taken it up, because maybe they would have liked to have had McDonald's on board the ship, make it a bit fun, but they didn't do it in the end. The character of Worf tells Riker but he needs a Klingon mate during this episode. He turns down one of these human-looking aliens because he says he needs a Klingon mate. Now that is an absolute lie. His mate, his first mate that we witness in Star Trek, is a half Klingon. We then go on to see him with Deanna Troi, not a Klingon. Jadzia Dax, not a Klingon. Now, he did actually try it on with Lady Grilka, but that didn't really work out. So, yeah, he did try it on with a Klingon, but he was unsuccessful. Other than that, I've mostly seen him just trying to get it on with anyone. So, at the point where he says that he needs a Klingon mate, that is a complete bloomin' lie. During this episode, a glowing alien orb is seen. It goes on board the Starship Enterprise, it flies around, it has a look closely into people's faces. I think it has a gaze upon Data, it has a gaze upon Captain Picard. Now you might be thinking that this alien orb is actually just that, but I hate to spoil things for you, it's simply a special effect. It was designed by the design team based on what was in the script, and it was created on computers and edited into the show. So there's actually not really a glowing orb in the episode, it's just a special effect. Now if you think of how many actors are involved in Star Trek Next Generation, not just this episode, although this is pertinent to this episode because there is lots of actors in it, there's a load of actors in the background, there must be 50-60 actors all in this episode, from the extras to the main speaking cast. But if you think of how many actors there are, actors, in Star Trek Next Generation, it's extremely unlikely that any of them shown in this episode will live to be 150 years old. That's just way beyond expectations, even though the human lifespan is increasing over time because of better medicines, better lifestyles. People are really getting to know about the way to stay fit, etc. But it's extremely unlikely that any of the actors shown in this episode will survive to be 150 years old. And that's a shame, because I'm sure a lot of them are really nice people, and I'd like to see them live on, but they're just not going to. Okay, thanks very much for checking out my truths. I'll see you next week. Don't forget to come back unless you don't want to. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much. Goodbye.